The accounts of the life of Jesus and other biblical texts were written by eyewitnesses and followers of Jesus who were present during his ministry, his crucifixion, and saw his resurrection. These accounts provide us with first-hand testimony of the events that took place, with multiple witnesses attesting to the reality of Jesus' resurrection. Now, we've already talked about the verifiable evidence for the empty tomb, the fact that eyewitnesses claimed that they had seen and witnessed a bodily resurrection. And now we're going to talk about the evidence that we see as a result of the changed lives of those who believed they had witnessed a resurrection. The fact that the disciples were willing to suffer persecution and even death for their belief in the resurrection further validates the sincerity of their testimony. Here was a group of people who had been with Jesus for 3 years, watching and learning from him, yet most of them ran away and left him when he was arrested and crucified. It seemed that the movement was over. Some of them betrayed him and others denied knowing him. They were terrified and in fear for their own lives, that they would be next. They ran away and hid. They met behind locked doors and some went back to their old lives. They weren't expecting a resurrection. And yet, something dramatically changed. Even scholars who don't believe in the resurrection accept and acknowledge that something changed in those first friends and followers of Jesus around that time. They acknowledge that there was a bunch of people in this location at this time who started talking about a resurrected Messiah, Saviour figure. Perhaps one of the most compelling stories amongst these first friends of Jesus was a man called James. James wasn't just a friend of Jesus, he was the brother of Jesus. And he was so skeptical that he didn't turn up to his brother's crucifixion. But he had a change of heart and concluded, imagine this, that his brother, his own flesh and blood brother, was the Son of God and the Lord. Now, James didn't believe whilst Jesus was doing his ministry, his miracles, all the teaching. Of course he didn't. He was his brother. Imagine what it would take for your brother to convince you that he was the Messiah. But later, James showed up as the leader of a church in Jerusalem, and he was stoned to death because he wouldn't renounce his firm belief that his brother was the Messiah, was his Messiah, and that Jesus had been raised from the dead, proving that all of this was the case. And James's story was replicated in so many of those friends and followers of Jesus. Many of them were killed and went to their deaths, proclaiming that Jesus was risen. Christianity as a faith sprang into existence sometime midway through the 1st century AD. Again, history doesn't doubt that. Why? What caused it to begin? Well, even skeptical scholars recognize that the Christian faith owes its origins to the belief of the earliest disciples that God had raised Jesus from the dead. These disciples, these followers of Jesus who had run away when he was arrested, were now so convicted by the belief that they had seen him resurrected from the dead that they launched this whole movement that we now call Christianity. And many of them were tortured and killed for that belief and that movement. Let me ask you, would they really have done that if they didn't believe to their core that Jesus was risen? And would they believe that to the core unless they had seen it?